Hi, today we talk about the Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer, or simply Zodiac or the Zodiac, is the pseudonym of an American serial killer who operated in Northern California from at least the late 1960s to the early 1970s. His identity remains unknown. The killer originated the name in a series of taunting letters and cards sent to the San Francisco Bay Area press. These letters included 4 cryptograms, or ciphers. Of the 4 cryptograms sent, only one has been definitively solved. The Zodiac murdered 5 known victims in Berryessa, Vallow, Napa County, and San Francisco, respectively, between December 1968 and October 1969. He targeted young couples, with 2 of the men surviving attempted murder. He also murdered a male cab driver. The Zodiac himself once claimed to have murdered 37 victims. The San Francisco Police Department, SFPD, marked the case inactive in April 2004, but reopened it at some point prior to March 2007. The case also remains open in the city of Vallow, as well as in Napa County and Solano County. The California Department of Justice has maintained an open case file on the Zodiac murders since 1969. Although the Zodiac claimed to have committed 37 murders in letters to the newspapers, investigators agree on only 7 confirmed victims, 2 of whom survived. They are David Arthur Faraday, 17, and Betty Lou Jensen, 16, shot and killed on December 20, 1968, on Lake Herman Road, within the city limits of Berryessa. Michael Reno Madge, 19, and Darlene Elizabeth Ferrin, 22, shot on July 4, 1969, in the parking lot of Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallow. While Madge survived the attack, Ferrin was pronounced dead on arrival at Kaiser Foundation Hospital. Brian Calvin Hartnell, 20, and Cecilia Ann Shepard, 22, stabbed on September 27, 1969, at Lake Berryessa in Napa County. Hartnell survived 8 stab wounds to the back, but Shepard died as a result of her injuries on September 29, 1969. Paul Lee Stine, 29, shot and killed on October 11, 1969, in the Presidio Heights neighborhood in San Francisco. The first murders widely attributed to the Zodiac Killer were the shootings of high school students Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday on December 20, 1968, on Lake Herman Road, just inside Berryessa city limits. The couple were on their first date and planned to attend a Christmas concert at Hogan High School about 3 blocks from Jensen's home. The couple instead visited a friend before stopping at a local restaurant and then driving out on Lake Herman Road. At about 10:15 p.m., Faraday parked his mother's Rambler in a gravel turnout, which was a well-known lover's lane. Shortly after 11 p.m., their bodies were found by Stella Borges, who lived nearby. The Solano County Sheriff's Department investigated the crime but no leads developed. Utilizing available forensic data, Robert Graysmith postulated that another car pulled into the turnout just prior to 11 p.m. and parked beside the couple. The killer apparently exited the second car and walked toward the Rambler, possibly ordering the couple out of the Rambler. Jensen appeared to have exited the car first, yet when Faraday was halfway out, the killer apparently shot him in the head. The killer then shot Jensen 5 times in the back as she fled. Her body was found 28 feet from the car. The killer then drove off. Just before midnight on July 4, 1969, Darlene Ferrin and Michael Madge drove into the Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallow, 4 miles, 6.4 kilometers, from the Lake Herman Road murder site, and parked. While the couple sat in Ferrin's car, a second car drove into the lot and parked alongside them but almost immediately drove away. Returning about 10 minutes later, this second car parked behind them. The driver of the second car then exited the vehicle, approaching the passenger side door of Ferrin's car, carrying a flashlight and a 9mm Luger. The killer directed the flashlight into Madge's and Ferrin's eyes before shooting at them, firing 5 times. Both victims were hit, and several bullets had passed through Madge and into Ferrin. The killer walked away from the car, but upon hearing Madge's moaning, returned and shot each victim twice more before driving off. On July 5, 1969, at 12:40 a.m., a man phoned the Vallow Police Department to report and claim responsibility for the attack. The caller also took credit for the murders of Jensen and Faraday 6.5 months earlier. Police traced the call to a phone booth at a gas station at Springs Road in Tuolumne, located about 3/10 of a mile, 500 meters, from Ferrin's home and only a few blocks from the Vallow Police Department. Ferrin was pronounced dead at the hospital. Madge survived the attack despite being shot in the face, neck and chest. Madge described his attacker as a 26 to 30-year-old, 195 to 200 pound, 88 to 91 kilograms, or possibly even more, 5 foot 8 inch, 1.73 meters, white male with short, light brown curly hair. First letters from the Zodiac. I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is when I die I will be reborn in paradise and the I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or atop my collection or give slaves for my afterlife. Eberiata meth pt. The solution to Zodiac's 408 symbol cipher, including faithful transliterations of spelling and grammar errors in the original. The meaning, if any, of the final 18 letters has not been determined. On August 1, 1969, 3 letters prepared by the killer were received at the Vallow Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner. The nearly identical letters, subsequently described by a psychiatrist to have been written by someone you would expect to be brooding and isolated, took credit for the shootings at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs. Each letter also included 1/3 of a 408 symbol cryptogram which the killer claimed contained his identity. The killer demanded they be printed on each paper's front page or he would cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again, until I end up with a dozen people over the weekend. The Chronicle published its third of the cryptogram on page 4 of the next day's edition. An article printed alongside the code quoted Vallow Police Chief Jackie Stiltz as saying, "We're not satisfied that the letter was written by the murderer," and requested the writer send a second letter with more facts to prove his identity. The threatened murders did not happen, and all 3 parts were eventually published. On August 7, 1969, another letter was received at the San Francisco Examiner with the salutation, "Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking." This was the first time the killer had used this name for identification. The letter was a response to Chief Stiltz's request for more details that would prove he had killed Faraday, Jensen and Ferrin. In it, the Zodiac included details about the murders which had not yet been released to the public, as well as a message to the police that when they cracked his code they will have me. On August 8, 1969, Donald and Betty Harden of Salinas, California, cracked the 408 symbol cryptogram. It contained a misspelled message in which the killer seemed to reference the most dangerous game. He also said he was collecting slaves for the afterlife. No name appears in the decoded text, and the killer said that he would not give away his identity because it would slow down or stop his slave collection. On September 27, 1969, Pacific Union College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were picnicking at Lake Berryessa on a small island connected by a sand spit to Twin Oak Ridge. A white man, about 5 feet 11 inches, 1.80 meters, weighing more than 170 pounds, 77 kilograms, with combed greasy brown hair, approached them wearing a black executioner's type hoodie with clip-on sunglasses over the eye holes and a bib-like device on his chest that had a white 3x3 inch, 7.6 centimeters x 7.6 centimeters, cross-circle symbol on it. He approached them with a gun, which Hartnell believed to be a .45. The hooded man claimed to be an escaped convict from a jail with a two-word name, in either Colorado or Montana. A police officer later inferred he had been referring to a jail in Deer Lodge, Montana, where he had killed a guard and subsequently stolen a car, explaining that he now needed their car and money to go to Mexico, as the vehicle he had been driving was too hot. He had brought pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline and told Shepard to tie up Hartnell, before he tied her up. The killer checked and tightened Hartnell's bonds after discovering Shepard had bound Hartnell's hands loosely. Hartnell initially believed this event to be a bizarre robbery, but the man drew a knife and stabbed them both repeatedly, Hartnell suffering 6 and Shepard 10 wounds in the process. The killer then hiked 500 yards, 460 meters, back up to Knoxville Road, drew the cross-circle symbol on Hartnell's car door with a black felt tip pen, and wrote beneath it, Valor/12/26/87469/Sept27-69-6:30/ by knife. At 7:40 p.m., the killer called the Napa County Sheriff's Office from a pay telephone to report this latest crime. The caller first stated to the operator that he wished to report a murder, no, a double murder, before stating that he had been the perpetrator of the crime. The phone was found, still off the hook, minutes later at the Napa Car Wash on Main Street in Napa by Von radio reporter Pate Stanley, only a few blocks from the sheriff's office, yet 27 miles, 43 kilometers, from the crime scene. Detectives were able to lift a still wet palm print from the telephone but were never able to match it to any suspect. After hearing their screams for help, a man and his son who were fishing in a nearby cove discovered the victims and summoned help by contacting park rangers. Napa County Sheriff's deputies Dave Collins and Ray Land were the first law enforcement officers to arrive at the crime scene. Cecilia Shepard was conscious when Collins arrived, providing him with a detailed description of the attacker. Hartnell and Shepard were taken to Queen of the Valley Hospital in Napa by ambulance. Shepard lapsed into a coma during transport to the hospital and never regained consciousness. She died 2 days later, but Hartnell survived to recount his tale to the press. Napa County Sheriff Detective Ken Narlow, who was assigned to the case from the outset, worked on solving the crime until his retirement from the department in 1987. 2 weeks later, on October 11, 1969, a white male passenger entered the cab driven by Paul Stine at the intersection of Mason and Geary Streets, 1 block west from Union Square, in San Francisco, requesting to be taken to Washington and Maple Streets in Presidio Heights. For reasons unknown, Stine drove 1 block past Maple to Cherry Street. The passenger then shot Stine once in the head with a 9mm, took Stine's wallet and car keys, and tore away a section of Stine's blood-stained shirt tail. This passenger was observed by 3 teenagers across the street at 9:55 p.m., who called the police while the crime was in progress. They observed a man wiping the cab down before walking away towards the Presidio, 1 block to the north. 2 blocks from the crime scene, Patrol Officer Don Fook and Eric Zelms, responding to the call, observed a white man walking along the sidewalk east on Jackson Street and stepping onto a stairway leading up to the front yard of one of the homes on the north side of the street. The encounter lasted only 5 to 10 seconds. Fook estimated the white male pedestrian to be 35 to 45 years old, 5 feet 10 inches tall with a crew cut, similar to but slightly older than the description of the teenagers who observed the killer in and out of Stine's cab as a 25 to 30-year-old crew-cut white male about 5 foot 8 inch, 1.73 meters, to 5 foot 9 inch, 1.75 meters, tall. The police radio dispatcher had however initially alerted officers to be on the lookout for a black suspect, so Fook and Zelms drove past him without stopping. The mix-up in descriptions remains unexplained. A search ensued, but no suspects were found. This was the last officially confirmed murder by the Zodiac Killer. The Stine murder was initially thought to be a routine robbery that had escalated. However, on October 13, The San Francisco Chronicle received a new letter from Zodiac containing a piece of bloody shirt and taking credit for the killing. The 3 teen witnesses worked with a police artist to prepare a composite sketch of Stine's killer. A few days later, this police artist returned, working with the witnesses to prepare a second composite sketch of the killer. Detectives Bill Armstrong and Dave Toschi were assigned to the case. The San Francisco Police Department investigated an estimated 2,500 suspects over a period of years. On October 14, 1969, the Chronicle received another letter from the Zodiac, this time containing a swatch of Paul Stine's shirt tail as proof he was the killer. It also included a threat about killing schoolchildren on a school bus. To do this, Zodiac wrote, "Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out." At 2 p.m. on October 20, 1969, someone claiming to be the Zodiac called the Oakland Police Department, OPD, demanding that one of 2 prominent lawyers, F. Lee Bailey or Melvin Bailey, appear on AM San Francisco, a talk show on KGO-TV hosted by Jim Dunbar. Bailey was not available, but Bailey did appear on the show. Dunbar appealed to the viewers to keep the lines open, and eventually, someone claiming to be the Zodiac called several times and said his name was Sam. Bailey agreed to meet with him in Daly City, but the suspect never showed up. On November 8, 1969, the Zodiac mailed a card with another cryptogram consisting of 340 characters. The 340-character cipher has never been decoded. Numerous possible solutions have been suggested, but none can be claimed as definitive. On November 9, 1969, the Zodiac mailed a 7-page letter stating that 2 policemen stopped and actually spoke with him 3 minutes after he shot Stine. Excerpts from the letter were published in the Chronicle on November 12, including the Zodiac's claim. That same day, Officer Don Fuchs wrote a memo explaining what had happened the night of Stine's murder. On December 20, 1969, exactly 1 year after the murders of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, the Zodiac mailed a letter to Billy that included another swatch of Stine's shirt. The Zodiac said he wanted Billy to help him. Various authors speculated at the time of the killings that other murders may have been the work of the Zodiac, but none have been confirmed. Robert Domingos, 18, and Linda Edwards, 17, shot and killed on June 4, 1963, on the beach near Gaviota. There are some specific similarities between their attack and the Zodiac's attack at Lake Berryessa 6 years later. Cherry Joe Bates, 18, stabbed to death and nearly decapitated on October 30, 1966, at Riverside City College in Riverside. Bates's possible connection to the Zodiac only appeared 4 years after her murder, when San Francisco Chronicle reporter Paul Avery received a tip regarding similarities between their Zodiac killings and the circumstances surrounding Bates's death. Donna Lass, 25, last seen September 6, 1970, in State Line, Nevada. A postcard with an advertisement from Forest Pines Condominiums, near Incline Village at Lake Tahoe, pasted on the back, was received at the Chronicle on March 22, 1971. No evidence has been uncovered to connect Lass's disappearance with the Zodiac Killer, however. Kathleen Johns, 22, allegedly abducted on March 22, 1970, on Highway 132 near I-580, in an area west of Modesto. Johns escaped from the car of a man who drove her and her infant daughter around the area between Stockton and Patterson for approximately 1.5 hours. On the night of March 22, 1970, Kathleen Johns was driving from San Bernardino to Petaluma to visit her mother. She was 7 months pregnant and had her 10-month-old daughter beside her. While heading west on Highway 132 near Modesto, a car behind her began honking its horn and flashing its headlights. She pulled off the road and stopped. The man in the car parked behind her, approached her car, stated that he observed that her right rear wheel was wobbling, and offered to tighten the lug nuts. After finishing his work, the man drove off, yet when Johns pulled forward to re-enter the highway, the wheel almost immediately came off the car. The man returned, offering to drive her to the nearest gas station for help. She and her daughter climbed into his car. During the ride, the car passed several service stations, but the man did not stop. For about 90 minutes he drove back and forth around the back roads near Tracy. When Johns asked why he was not stopping, he would change the subject. When the driver finally stopped at an intersection, Johns jumped out with her daughter and hid in a field. The driver searched for her using his flashlight, telling her that he would not hurt her, before eventually giving up. Unable to find her, he got back into the car and drove off. Johns hitched a ride to the police station in Paterson. When Johns gave her statement to the sergeant on duty, she noticed the police composite sketch of Paul Stine's killer and recognized him as the man who had abducted her and her child. Fearing he might come back and kill them all, the sergeant had Johns wait, in the dark, at the nearby Mills restaurant. When her car was found, it had been gutted and torched. Most accounts say he threatened to kill her and her daughter while driving them around, but at least one police report disputes that. Johns' account to Paul Avery of the Chronicle indicates her abductor left his car and searched for her in the dark with a flashlight. However, in one report she made to the police, she stated he did not leave the vehicle. Zodiac continued to communicate with authorities for the remainder of 1970 via letters and greeting cards to the press. In a letter postmarked April 20, 1970, the Zodiac wrote, "My name is _," followed by a 13-character cipher. The Zodiac went on to state that he was not responsible for the recent bombing of a police station in San Francisco, referring to the February 18, 1970, death of Sergeant Brian McDonnell 2 days after the bombing at Park Station in Golden Gate Park, but added there is more glory to killing a cop than a SID because a cop can shoot back. The letter included a diagram of a bomb the Zodiac claimed he would use to blow up a school bus. At the bottom of the diagram, he wrote, Zodiac Killer symbol. 10, SFPD. 0. Zodiac sent a greeting card postmarked April 28, 1970, to the Chronicle. Written on the card was, "I hope you enjoy yourselves when I have my blast," followed by the Zodiac's cross-circle signature. On the back of the card, the Zodiac threatened to use the bus bomb soon unless the newspaper published the full details he wrote. He also wanted to start seeing people wearing some nice Zodiac buttons. In a letter postmarked June 26, 1970, the Zodiac stated he was upset that he did not see people wearing Zodiac buttons. He wrote, "I shot a man sitting in a parked car with a .38. The Zodiac was possibly referring to the murder of Sergeant Richard Redetish, a week earlier, on June 19th. At 5:25 a.m., Redetish was writing a parking ticket in his squad car when an assailant shot him in the head with a .38 caliber pistol. Redetish died 15 hours later. SFPD denies the Zodiac was involved in this murder. It remains unsolved. Included with the letter was a Phillips 66 road map of the San Francisco Bay Area. On their image of Mount Diablo, the Zodiac had drawn a crossed circle similar to the ones he had included in previous correspondence. At the top of the crossed circle, he placed a 0, and then a 3, 6, and a 9. The accompanying instructions stated that the 0 was to be set to Mag N. The letter also included a 32-letter cipher that the killer claimed would, in conjunction with the code, lead to the location of a bomb he had buried and set to go off in the fall. The cipher was never decoded, and the alleged bomb was never located. The killer signed the note with Zodiac Killer symbol. 12, SFPD. 0. In a letter to the Chronicle postmarked July 24, 1970, the Zodiac took credit for Kathleen Johns' abduction, 4 months after the incident. In a July 26, 1970 letter, the Zodiac paraphrased a song from the Mikado, adding his own lyrics about making a little list of the ways he planned to torture his slaves in Paradise. The letter was signed with a large, exaggerated cross-circle symbol and a new score, Zodiac Killer symbol. 13, SFPD. 0 inches. A final note at the bottom of the letter stated, P.S. The Mount Diablo code concerns radians inches along the radians. In 1981, a close examination of the radian hint by Zodiac researcher Gareth Penn led to the discovery that a radian angle, when placed over the map per Zodiac's instructions, pointed to the locations of 2 Zodiac attacks. On October 7, 1970, the Chronicle received a 3x5-inch card signed by the Zodiac with the Zodiac Killer symbol, and a small cross reportedly drawn with blood. The card's message was formed by pasting words and letters from an edition of the Chronicle, and 13 holes were punched across the card. Inspectors Armstrong and Toschi agreed it was highly probable the card came from the Zodiac. On October 27, 1970, Chronicle reporter Paul Avery, who had been covering the Zodiac case, received a Halloween card signed with the letter Z and their Zodiac's cross-circle symbol. Handwritten on the card was the note, "Peekaboo, you are doomed." The threat was taken seriously and received a front-page story on the Chronicle. Soon after receiving this letter, Avery received an anonymous letter alerting him to the similarities between the Zodiac's activities and the unsolved murder of Cherry Joe Bates, which had occurred 4 years earlier at the City College in Riverside in the greater Los Angeles area, more than 400 miles, 640 kilometers, south of San Francisco. He reported his findings in the Chronicle on November 16, 1970. On October 30, 1966, 18-year-old Cherry Joe Bates, a student of Riverside Community College, spent the evening at the campus library annex until it closed at 9 p.m. Neighbors reported hearing a scream around 10:30 p.m. Bates was found dead the next morning, a short distance from the library, between 2 abandoned houses slated to be demolished for campus renovations. The wires in her Volkswagen's distributor cap had been pulled out. She was brutally beaten and stabbed to death. A man's Timex watch with a torn wristband was found nearby. The watch had stopped at 12:24, but police believe the attack occurred much earlier. A month later, on November 29, 1966, nearly identical typewritten letters were mailed to the Riverside Police and the Riverside Press Enterprise, titled The Confession. The author claimed responsibility for the Bates murder, providing details of the crime that were not released to the public. The author warned that Bates is not the first and she will not be the last. In December 1966, a poem was discovered carved into the bottom side of a desktop in the Riverside City College library. Titled Sick of Living, Unwilling to Die, the poem's language and handwriting resembled that of the Zodiac's letters. It was signed with what were assumed to be the initials RH. During the 1970 investigation, Sherwood Morrill, California's top question documents examiner, expressed his opinion that the poem was written by the Zodiac. On April 30, 1967, exactly 6 months after the Bates murder, Bates' father Joseph, the Press Enterprise, and the Riverside Police all received nearly identical letters. In a handwritten scrawl, the Press Enterprise and police copies read, "Bates had to die, there will be more," with a small scribble at the bottom that resembled the letter Z. Joseph Bates' copy reads, "She had to die, there will be more," this time without the Z signature. On March 13, 1971, 5 months after Avery's article linking the Zodiac to the Riverside murder, the Zodiac mailed a letter to the Los Angeles Times. In the letter he credited the police, instead of Avery, for discovering his Riverside activity, but they are only finding the easy ones, there are a hell of a lot more down there. The connection between Cherry Joe Bates, Riverside and their Zodiac remains uncertain. Paul Avery and the Riverside Police Department maintain that the Bates homicide was not committed by the Zodiac, but did concede some of the Bates letters may have been his work to claim credit falsely. On March 22, 1971, a postcard to the Chronicle, addressed to Paul Avery and believed to be from the Zodiac, appeared to claim responsibility for the disappearance of Donna Lass on September 6, 1970. Made from a collage of advertisements and magazine lettering, it featured a scene from an advertisement for Forest Pines condominiums and the text Sierra Club, sought victim 12 inches, peek through the pines, past Lake Tahoe areas, and around in the snow. Zodiac's cross-circle symbol was in both the place of the usual return address and the lower right section of the front face of the postcard. Lass was a nurse at the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino. She worked until about 2 a.m. on September 6, 1970, treating her last patient at 1:40 a.m. later that same day. Both Lass's employer and her landlord received phone calls from an unknown male falsely claiming Lass had left town due to a family emergency. Lass was never found. What appeared to be a grave site was discovered near the Claire Tappan Lodge in Northern California, on Sierra Club property, but an excavation yielded only a pair of sunglasses. No evidence has been uncovered to connect the Lass disappearance with the Zodiac Killer definitively. In a Vallow Times-Herald story appearing on November 13, 1972, Bill Baker of the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office postulated that the 1963 murders of a young couple in northern Santa Barbara County might have been the work of the Zodiac Killer. On June 4, 1963, high school senior Robert Domingos and fiancée Linda Edwards were shot dead on a beach near Lompoc, having skipped school that day for senior ditch day. Police believed that the assailant attempted to bind the victims, but when they freed themselves and attempted to flee, the killer shot them repeatedly in the back and chest with a .22 caliber weapon. The killer then placed their bodies in a small shack and then tried, unsuccessfully, to burn the structure to the ground. After the Pines card, their Zodiac remained silent for nearly 3 years. The Chronicle then received a letter from the Zodiac, postmarked January 29, 1974, praising The Exorcist as the best satirical comedy that I have ever seen. The letter included a snippet of verse from the Mikado and an unusual symbol at the bottom that has remained unexplained by researchers. Zodiac concluded the letter with a new score, Me equals 37, SFPD equals 0 inches. Of further communications sent by the public to members of the news media, some contained similar characteristics of previous Zodiac writings. The Chronicle received a letter postmarked February 14, 1974, informing the editor that the initials for the Symbionese Liberation Army spelled out an Old Norse word meaning kill. However, the handwriting was not authenticated as the Zodiac's. Our letter to the Chronicle, postmarked May 8, 1974, featured a complaint that the movie Badlands was murder glorification and asked the paper to cut its advertisements. Signed only a citizen, the handwriting, tone, and surface irony were all similar to earlier Zodiac communications. The Chronicle subsequently received an anonymous letter postmarked July 8, 1974, complaining of their publishing the writings of the anti-feminist columnist Marco Spinelli. The letter was signed The Red Phantom, Red with Rage. The Zodiac's authorship of this letter is debated. A letter, dated April 24, 1978, was initially deemed authentic, but was declared a hoax less than 3 months later by 3 experts. Dave Toschi, the SFPD homicide detective who had worked the case since the Stine murder, was thought to have forged the letter, because author Armistead Maupin believed the letter to be similar to fan mail he received in 1976 which he believed was authored by Toschi. While he admitted to writing the fan mail, Toschi denied forging the Zodiac letter and was eventually cleared of any charges. The authenticity of this letter remains unverified. On March 3, 2007, an American Greetings Christmas card sent to the Chronicle, postmarked 1990 in Eureka, had recently been discovered in their photo files by editorial assistant Daniel King. Inside the envelope, with the card, was a photocopy of 2 U.S. postal keys on a magnet keychain. The handwriting on the envelope resembles Zodiac's print, but was declared inauthentic by forensic document examiner Lloyd Cunningham. However, not all Zodiac experts agree with Cunningham's analysis. There is no return address on the envelope nor is his crossed circle signature to be found. The card itself is unmarked. The Chronicle turned over all the material to the Vallow Police Department for further analysis. In April 2004, the SFPD marked the case inactive, citing caseload pressure and resource demands, effectively closing the case. However, they reopened their case sometime before March 2007. The case is open in Napa County and in the city of Riverside. In May 2018, the Vallow Police Department announced their intention to attempt to collect the Zodiac Killer's DNA from the back of stamps he used during his correspondence. The analysis, by a private laboratory, is expected to check the DNA against GE'd match. It is hoped the Zodiac Killer may be caught in a similar fashion to the Golden State Killer Joseph James Angelo. In May 2018, a Vallow police detective said that results were expected in several weeks. However, to date, no results have been reported. Robert Graysmith's book Zodiac advanced Arthur Lee Allen as a potential suspect based on circumstantial evidence. Allen had been interviewed by police from the early days of the Zodiac investigations and was the subject of several search warrants over a 20-year period. In 2007, Graysmith noted that several police detectives described Allen as the most likely suspect. However, in 2010, Toschi stated that all the evidence against Allen ultimately turned out to be negative. On October 6, 1969, Allen was interviewed by Detective John Lynch of the Vallow Police Department. Allen had been reported in the vicinity of the Lake Berryessa attack against Hartnell and Shepard on September 27, 1969. He described himself scuba diving at Salt Point on the day of the attacks. Allen again came to police attention in 1971 when his friend Donald Cheney reported to police in Manhattan Beach, California, that Allen had spoken of his desire to kill people, use the name Zodiac, and secure a flashlight to a firearm for visibility at night. According to Cheney, this conversation occurred no later than January 1, 1969. Jack Milenax of the Vallow Police Department subsequently wrote Allen had received an other than honorable discharge from the U.S. Navy in 1958, and had been fired from his job as an elementary school teacher in March 1968 after allegations of sexual misconduct with students. He was generally well regarded by those who knew him, but he was also described as fixated on young children and angry at women. He apparently never had a girlfriend or wife. In September 1972, San Francisco police obtained a search warrant for Allen's residence. In 1974, Allen was arrested for sexually assaulting a 12-year-old boy. He pleaded guilty and served 2 years imprisonment. Vallow police served another search warrant at Allen's residence in February 1991. 2 days after Allen's death in 1992, Vallow police served another warrant and seized property from Allen's residence. Other evidence existed against Allen, albeit entirely circumstantial. A letter sent to the Riverside Police Department from Bates's killer was typed with a Royal typewriter with an Elite type, the same brand found during the February 1991 search of Allen's residence. He owned and wore a Zodiac brand wristwatch. He lived in Vallow and worked minutes away from where one of the Zodiac victims, Ferrin, lived and from where one of the killings took place. In 2002, SFPD developed a partial DNA profile from the saliva on stamps and envelopes of Zodiac's letters. SFPD compared this partial DNA to the DNA of Arthur Lee Allen. A DNA comparison was also made with the DNA of Don Cheney, who was Allen's former close friend and the first person to suggest Allen may be the Zodiac Killer. Since neither test result indicated a match, Allen and Cheney were excluded as the contributors of the DNA. Retired police handwriting expert Lloyd Cunningham, who worked on the Zodiac case for decades, added, "They gave me banana boxes full of Allen's writing, and none of his writing even came close to the Zodiac. Nor did DNA extracted from the envelopes, on the Zodiac letters, come close to Arthur Lee Allen." While police often use document examiners during investigations, court rulings on the scientific validity of handwriting analysis have been mixed to negative. Ross Sullivan became a person of interest through the possible link between the Zodiac Killer and the murder of Cherry Joe Bates in Riverside. Sullivan was a library assistant at Riverside City College and was suspected by colleagues who said that he went missing for several days after the murder. Sullivan resembled sketches of the Zodiac and wore military-style boots like the footprints found at the Lake Berryessa crime scene. Sullivan was hospitalized multiple times for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. Kathleen Johns, who claimed to have been abducted by the Zodiac Killer, later recognized U.S. Navy veteran Lawrence Kane in a photo lineup. Patrol officer Don Fouke, who possibly observed the Zodiac Killer following the murder of Paul Stine, said that Kane closely resembled the man he and Eric Zelms encountered. Kane worked at the same Nevada hotel as possible Zodiac victim Donna Lass. Kane was diagnosed with impulse control disorder after suffering brain injuries in a 1962 accident. He was arrested for voyeurism and prowling. Police informants accused U.S. Navy veteran Richard Reed Marshall, born Joe Don Dickey, of being the Zodiac Killer, claiming that he privately hinted at being a murderer. Marshall lived in Riverside in 1966 and San Francisco in 1969, close to the scenes of the Bates and Stine murders. He was a silent film enthusiast and projectionist, screening Segundo de Chomon's The Red Phantom, 1907, a name used by the author of a possible 1974 Zodiac letter. Detective Ken Nallo said that Marshall makes good reading but is not a very good suspect in my estimation. Ted Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber, was investigated for possible connections to the Zodiac Killer in 1996. Kaczynski worked in Northern California at the time of the Zodiac murders, and like their Zodiac had an interest in cryptography and threatened the press into publishing his communications. Kaczynski was ruled out by both the FBI and SFPD based on fingerprint and handwriting comparison, and by his absence from California on certain dates of known Zodiac activity. Bruce Davis, a member of Charles Manson's Manson family cult and a convicted murderer, was investigated, but no evidence linking him to the Zodiac murders was discovered. A 1970 report by the California Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation stated that all male members of the Manson family had been investigated and eliminated as Zodiac suspects. In 2007, a man named Dennis Kaufman claimed that his stepfather Jack Tarrance was the Zodiac. Kaufman turned several items over to the FBI, including a hood similar to the one worn by the Zodiac. According to news sources, DNA analysis conducted by the FBI on the items was deemed inconclusive in 2010. In 2009, a former lawyer named Robert Tarbucks, who, in August 1975, was disbarred by the California Supreme Court for failure to pay some clients, said that in the early 1970s a merchant mariner walked into his office and confessed to him that he was the Zodiac Killer. The seemingly lucid seaman, whose name Tarbucks would not reveal due to confidentiality, described his crimes briefly but persuasively enough to convince Tarbucks. The man said he was trying to stop himself from his opportunistic murder spree but never returned to see Tarbucks again. Tarbucks took out a full-page ad in the Vallow Times-Herald that he claimed would clear the name of Arthur Lee Allen as a killer, his only reason for revealing the story 30 years after the fact. Robert Graysmith, the author of several books on Zodiac, said Tarbucks's story was entirely plausible. In 2009, an episode of the History Channel television series Mystery Quest looked at newspaper editor and U.S. Army veteran Richard Gaikowski. During the time of the murders, Gaikowski worked for Good Times, a San Francisco counterculture newspaper. His appearance resembled the composite sketch, and Nancy Slover, the Vallow police dispatcher who was contacted by the Zodiac shortly after the Blue Rock Springs attack, identified a recording of Gaikowski's voice as being the same as the Zodiac's. Retired police detective Steve Hodel argues in his book The Black Dahlia Avenger that his father, George Hodel, was the Black Dahlia Killer, whose victims include Elizabeth Short. The book led to the release of previously suppressed files and wire recordings by the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office of his father, which showed that the elder Hodel had indeed been a prime suspect in Short's murder. District Attorney Steve Case subsequently wrote a letter which is published in the revised edition stating that if George Hodel were still alive he would be prosecuted for the crimes. In a follow-up book, Hodel argued a circumstantial case that his father was also the Zodiac Killer based upon a police sketch. The similarity of the style of the Zodiac letters to the Black Dahlia Avenger letters and questions document examination. On February 19, 2011, America's Most Wanted featured a story about the Zodiac Killer. In 2010, a picture surfaced of known Zodiac victim Darlene Ferrin and an unknown man who closely resembles the composite sketch, formed based on eyewitnesses' descriptions, of the Zodiac Killer. Police believe the photo was taken in San Francisco in the middle of 1966 or 1967. Convicted serial killer Edward Edwards, who committed 5 murders between 1977 and 1996, was linked to the Zodiac murders and several other unsolved cases by former cold case detective John A. Cameron. Cameron's theories were met with almost universal disdain, especially from law enforcement. Former California Highway Patrol Officer Lyndon Lafferty said the Zodiac Killer was a 91-year-old Solano County, California man whom he called by the pseudonym George Russell Tucker. Using a group of retired law enforcement officers called the Mandamus 7, Lafferty discovered Tucker and outlined an alleged cover-up for why he was not pursued. Tucker died in February 2012 and was not named because he was not considered a suspect by police. In February 2014, it was reported that a man named Louis Joseph Myers had confessed to a friend in 2001 that he was the Zodiac Killer, after learning that he was dying from cirrhosis of the liver. He requested that his friend, Randy Kenny, go to the police upon his death. Myers died in 2002, but Kenny allegedly had difficulties getting officers to cooperate and take the claims seriously. There are several potential connections between Myers and the Zodiac case. Myers attended the same high schools as victims David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, and allegedly worked in the same restaurant as victim Darlene Ferrin. Furthermore, during the 1971 to 1973 period when no Zodiac letters were received, Myers was stationed overseas with the military. Kenny says that Myers confessed he targeted couples because he had had a bad breakup with a girlfriend. While officers associated with the case are skeptical, they believe the story is credible enough to investigate if Kenny could produce credible evidence. Robert Ivan Nichols aka Joseph Newton Chandler III was a formerly unidentified identity thief who committed suicide in Eastlake, Ohio, in July 2002. After his death, investigators were unable to locate his family and discovered that he had stolen the identity of an 8-year-old boy who was killed in a car crash in Texas in 1945. The lengths to which Nichols went to hide his identity led to speculation that he was a violent fugitive. The U.S. Marshals Service announced his identification at a press conference in Cleveland on June 21, 2018. Some internet sleuths suggested that he might have been the Zodiac Killer as he resembled police sketches of the Zodiac and had lived in California, where the Zodiac operated. In 2014, Gary Stewart published a book, The Most Dangerous Animal of All, in which he claimed his search for his biological father, Earl Van Best, Jr., led him to conclude Van Best was the Zodiac Killer. In 2020, the book was adapted for FX Network as a documentary series.